198 straight days.
We're going streaky! Yes!
Welcome into Clippers Talk. I'm Adam Moslin, fully prepared, as always, to give you guys a good show here. No, I got my bearings now. I'm good.
Woo!
Let's go. On an Easter Sunday. I am a believer. I also felt like I wanted to keep the streak going today. And so here I am. And we're going to have some guests on for you. And we're going to unpack everything that happened in game one and get set for game two, including some of the audio we got today from Coach Lue and Ivica Zubats. Joey Linn will join the show from Denver in just about a half hour from now. Then we'll have Robert Flom on from 213 Hoops. I'm excited. Two good guests. It's the playoffs. You got to double up. You got to have two guests. I need help. I need help understanding what happened. I mean,
get out there, Ben, and put that shit up. No, put it up, Ben.
Did Ben have one attempt? I want to say he did. Yeah, 0 of 1. So that happened.
Put it up, Ben.
Happy Easter, says Marcino. Happy Easter. Appreciate you. Let me send out the emails here. I hope I made sure Joey Linn knew I was talking about 4:30 Pacific time. I think I did that right. Robert Flom will join then at 5. I think 4-5. And okay, 877-520-1150, 877-520-1150 is the phone number. If you guys want to get on, I did jump on with the Pull-Up podcast a little bit earlier. There were some heated debates going on, and I was definitely caught up in the middle of it. I have no idea how some people can try to find a way to blame James Harden for game one and not attribute any blame to Kawhi Leonard. It's never that simple. It's never on one guy. I went through, and maybe I could play some of this, but I do want to get some of the audio we got from today because it's important to review that stuff as we always do here on the show. But I haven't seen it on Hoop Jab or Hoop Chef yet. But I do have Joey Linn. I have La Murray, who's there. And they gave us a little bit of audio. I think Justin Rousseau had some quotes from today. So we'll get into all that. But I also reviewed the entire game and watched it again. Maybe not the entire game. Maybe the most important parts of the game where I think the game was won and lost. And I'll tell you what my findings were because I think I could be a little bit more critical on something. But first, I want to get to a phone call. We got a caller from the 408 here. You're on Clippers Talk with Adam Moslin. Welcome in. What's up?
Oh, what's up, Adam?
What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Yeah, this is Carlo from Denver.
Nuggets fan or?
Yeah, no.
So a Clippers fan in Denver? Oh, this is Carlo Jimenez?
This is Carlo. You got it. Yeah, I just wanted to know.
Oh, bro, I'm about to send over those highlights right now.
No. That's not what I'm calling about.
It's Easter. Take the day off, my guy. You got to rest up. Rest the pipes for game two.
That's what I'm calling you about, Adam. 2 guests on Easter? 2 guests?
Why not? Now it's 3, actually.
You're a machine. The Clipper people don't deserve you, but we appreciate you, and that's what I wanted to call about today. That we appreciate you for bringing us the content.
Oh, my guy. You know, it's all love here with the TM crew. Appreciate you saying that. But, you know, this is what we do. I love it. We love what we do. If you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. So if I didn't enjoy it so much, nobody's got a gun to my head to keep doing these shows every day. It's totally up to me in the end. So obviously I must love doing this. And I do. And part of the reason is working with great people such as yourself. How are you feeling right now? And were you there earlier at the press conference with Coach Lue and Ivica Zubac I saw?
I was there. I enjoyed what Ty said. He said, look, the last game is behind us already, and it's on to the next. And I'm confident the Clippers are going to – wow, look at you emailing me and calling me at the same time. That is impressive. That is impressive right there. I don't know how you do it. You impress me every day. No, look, you got to win 4. And the Clippers have a much better record under Ty Lue when they lose game 1. So that's my bright side in this.
What is that record when they lose game 1 under Coach Lue?
2-1, baby. 2-1 in series when they lose game 1. So I'll take it.
Okay, not the largest sample size, but if we're looking for any positives, we will take it, and we are.
All right, I got you. I got you.
What else do
That's what I'm
you
here
feel?
for.
Did you rewatch the game already?
No, I did watch all of Kawhi's shots in the fourth. I also want to say his 7 turnovers, I think 2 or 3 of those probably are like him trying to save the ball out of bounds. So I think it's like more like 4, but I watched
2 to
all
Ben
those.
Simmons. They were on a different page. Him and Ben Simmons for 2 of them.
Yeah, and then he remember the one where he thought he got fouled on a crazy rebound,
right?
And then there was one where he saved it on the baseline that they gave him a turnover for. I thought it was just like a loose ball. I don't know how he had possession, but
that's a good point.
Yeah.
The box score doesn't tell the entire story. Certainly not in this case. I thought about putting together the turnover mix with Kawhi. I did put up the last 5 minutes and 10 seconds of the second quarter, where I think we both agree that's a big turning point where the game may have been lost up by 15.
Yeah.
But I honestly, in reviewing that and reviewing a lot of the tape, some of this is just stellar play from the Denver Nuggets. Runs happen. That second quarter one, I felt like, one of the shots that they missed there was James Harden crossing over Michael Porter Jr. and making him touch earth. That's a wide open shot.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you feel better after kind of just thinking about what occurred in game 1?
I think I have to, simply because I don't think this is a team that, you really can't get a gut check better than that, where you turned it over 20 times, you give up 7 offensive rebounds in the final 7 minutes of the game. The Clippers know exactly what they need to correct, and all of it's controllable. And I have a belief in this team, Adam. I mean, they haven't lost 2 games in a row since March 2nd and 4th.
Ooh.
I think they'll be okay. They've proven they can bounce back. So I'm feeling good. I'm going to leave you to this, though. I know you're about to do.
Okay, one more question.
Content.
One more question.
One more
quick one, because people are asking in the chat, and I think this is good. Are you feeling the altitude? What's it like?
I am feeling the altitude. I'm being honest. I am feeling the altitude is 100% real. It is. I don't do cardio, Adam, but in my workouts, I feel it. And I don't do cardio, so I can't imagine running up and down a basketball court. It is definitely real. I will say the Clippers have been here since Thursday now, so I don't know how fast your body can adjust, but maybe Monday they feel like they're a little more adjusted. We'll see. But it's real, Adam. Altitude is real.
All right. Well, you're a real one for calling in here. Appreciate you on an Easter Sunday. Take the rest of the day off to, do more prep for tomorrow, because that's all we do.
That's all we do, baby.
Workaholics, but we love it. All right, Carlo, be good, my friend. Thanks for calling in here on Clipper Stock.
Adam, anytime. You can't be a workaholic if you love what you do. It's not working.
That's right. Damn straight. Well said by Carlo Jimenez. You know what? Let's go! There goes Carlo. That was unexpected. I didn't think he was calling in like that. Joey Linn's going to be with us in about 19 minutes from now. Then we will have Robert Flom on at 5 o'clock Pacific time from 213 Hoops, because I think he brought up some really interesting points on the Lob the Jam, the podcast with Lucas Han, Don't Call Him Han, and Dr. Shapp post game. They did like at least an hour-long show. And maybe I could have been more critical of some of the moves out there from Coach Lue than I was last night. I'm not saying he lost them the game or anything like that. I think there's a lot of different contributing factors there. I think the main one was 20 turnovers. I think if you're dividing up the slice of pie when it comes to blame, that takes up the biggest percentage. That's the biggest slice of the pie for why the Clippers lost. It starts with 20 turnovers. Then it's 7 offensive rebounds in the last 7 minutes of the game, meaning the last 2 minutes of the fourth quarter into the 5 minutes of overtime. I don't think either of those things are on Coach Lue. If you really are just a Coach Lue hater, and there are some people like that. I mentioned I was on the Pull Up podcast earlier, right? You could find a way to try to blame him for some of the rebounding issues, because schematically you could say, okay, Chris Dunn was helping off of Russell Westbrook and so far away that maybe he could have been an extra body in there, and he is a solid rebounder for a guard. But then if Jokic and Jamal Murray are getting off on single coverage, you're probably also blaming Coach Lue for that, so he just can't win. But I'll start with the stuff that I do think you can go after the Clippers for, and maybe they'll make adjustments to in game 2. I think it's fair to say, because of the game Norman Powell had, that 37 minutes is too many. Now, there's a flip side to this. If you start taking Norman Powell out of his regular rotation minutes in game 1, you may crush his confidence right off the bat. And he has been an elite fourth quarter player the last 2 years. He has stepped up in big moments regardless of how the rest of the game was going for him. Norman Powell, the last 2 seasons, has shot almost 50% from 3 and fourth quarters. Huge sample size. He's been clutch. He's had a 43-point playoff game for the Clippers before. He's been in big moments. He's a champion with Toronto. He has that championship medal to him. Taking that guy out in game 1 might lose him for the series. You can say Norm has to be a professional about it. He wasn't playing well. Okay. But because he wasn't playing well early doesn't mean he wouldn't show up and do some big things late. I just saw it against Golden State where they stayed with him, and he ended up getting a couple of clutch buckets in the fourth quarter of that game that went into overtime. So I can see the criticism, but there's another side to it too. If you're going after Coach Lue for that, okay, fair enough. I could see Nico being in there. Rebounding purposes, he's another guy you can throw at Jamal Murray, better defender, and he went 3 of 6 from the outside. Norman Powell was 5 of 12 overall, 2 of 6 from distance. But again, do you want to shake his confidence and have him feeling more pressure every time he's out there? If I don't make this shot, I'm going to get pulled. I'm going to get pulled. Because I don't know if you can win this series without Norm. This idea that you can just go away from him and they have all these better options that are still good enough to put you in a place where your ceiling is high enough to beat a team like Denver, I'm not so sure about that. I'm not saying it can't work for a game. It can't work for 2 games going away from Norm. I don't think you can win 4 games if Norman Powell doesn't have a big impact on this series. You got to think about that part. He might be a guy you just have to ride or die with. He's been too vital all season long. He's one of the big reasons why we think this Clippers team is so good. So to go away from him in game one, that is a decision. A tough one. I know people are saying, well, he hasn't played good next to Kawhi. Well, guess what? The net rating with Kawhi, this four-man lineup data, with Kawhi, Norm, Harden, and Ivica Zubac is plus 15 per 100 possessions. They have been good out there together. Even when Norm isn't shooting it that well. And I think he ended up like the last 13 games where he was playing next to Kawhi this season, shooting 39% from three. Oh no, that's so miserable. No, it's not the 44% he shot last season or the 42% or 41% he shot overall in the season. He wasn't terrible at all. It's a little bit blown out of proportion. The whole he can't play along Kawhi. The net rating says it. The eye test says it. They've been really good when those four guys are on the court, and Norm is a part of that. I think the Clippers at their best peaking includes Norman Powell. If you're not at your best, if you don't have every guy at your disposal, are you beating the Denver Nuggets? They're too good. You're going to need Norman Powell at some point. So I get his rationale. I also understand the criticism there. You could have just gone with Nico or DJ. Probably would have been Nico. Here's a criticism, and I heard this on the Lob the Jam, the podcast, and I thought it during the ball game, and I wasn't sure if I was missing something, but they confirmed it too. Guys didn't play heavy minutes in this ball game. You may look at the minutes and go, what do you mean, Adam? Kawhi played 41. Zoo played 40. Norm played 37. Harden played 43. Those are your guys. They played big minutes. You have to add in there were 5 extra minutes out there. Kawhi didn't play 41 of 48 minutes. He played 41 of 53 minutes, a possible 53. James Harden played 43 of a possible 53. Both of them played more minutes last week in the final regular season game in overtime against Golden State. What's the difference? If anything, shouldn't there be more of a sense of urgency to play bigger minutes in game one of the playoffs? Kawhi played 47 minutes in that game in Golden State. He played 41, 6 less in another game that went to overtime. And it's a playoff game, an official playoff game. James Harden played 48 minutes against Golden State. He played 5 less minutes in game one of this series. I don't understand that. Zubac played less too. The playoff series started. You look across the other side of the floor, Jokic played 46. Gordon played 46. Murray played 48. Christian Brown played 45. They played their crucial players heavier minutes, their core guys, than the Clippers did. Why? Did the altitude get to them? Is this a strategy to save their legs for later in the series, and you think the Denver Nuggets are going to wear down before the Clippers and you're playing 3D chess out there? Yeah, we may have lost game one, but we're going to win 2 more games because of this. In the long run, it's going to work out. Maybe. I guess we have to wait to judge this one. If they win game 2 and they look like the fresher team against Denver, who had to play heavier minutes to get that game 1 win, and you're going back to Intuit Dome tied up 1-1, and you have momentum, okay. I guess it worked. But if they lose this series in 6 or 7 games, and they lose game 2 and they're down 0-2 and have to fight back, and are in this uphill battle, and they end up ultimately losing the series, I'm going to think back to game 1 and wonder why Kawhi only played 41 minutes, James Harden only played 43, Ivica Zubac only played 40 in an overtime game. I think that criticism's fair. I mentioned this earlier, but I think they overhelped at times with Chris Dunn late in the game, being the roamer because his man was Russell Westbrook. They were willing to live with Russ beating them. I guess he did in this case. I mean, he was 5 of 17 still. I would say they lost for other reasons. Aaron Gordon and blowing a 15-point lead. But Russ had an impact. They were trapping Jamal Murray so early in the possession. It makes you have to work harder because there's a 24-second shot clock. You're already trapping. They get out of it. You're scrambling. You're rotating. That's what gasses you out. I would late double. I would fire late on Murray and Jokic. Not so early in the possession all the time. I think that's a fair criticism. But look, the small ball didn't lose them the game. A lot of people keep saying that. There's some false narrative, oh, he went too small. Well, in 6 minutes, where they were small without Ivica Zubac out there and Jokic on the floor, the Clippers actually went +1. They won those minutes. Jokic was +10 in the game. In a game, they lost by 2. So in the... How many minutes do you end up playing? In the 7 minutes that Jokic didn't play, the Clippers went +8. But they actually won the minutes out there when they didn't have Ivica Zubac on the floor against Jokic. Now, I'm not saying it's going to work every time, but it did that game. You can't look at that and say, oh, that's the reason. So that's not on Coach Lue. Here's some real criticism, though. It's game 1. You got to have a sense of urgency, I think. I mentioned the lack of minutes with their stars. Part of that was because James Harden got into foul trouble. He had 3 fouls in the first half. They took him off the floor with, I think, around 45 seconds left. Or I should say, I think it was about a minute and a half, maybe, left in the second quarter. They also took Kawhi off the floor then. He had 2 fouls. So I stand corrected. I thought he staggered them the entire game. He didn't. That's a little bit baffling to me. Kawhi didn't play heavy minutes in the first half. I get taking Harden off. He's got 3 fouls at the end of the second quarter. Kawhi has 2. Why not keep him, one of those guys out there? Why not keep Kawhi out there? And then it happened again for about 30 seconds at the end of the third quarter where both guys were off the court. So in total, they played about 2 minutes without them, without Kawhi or James Harden out there, and they went -4 in those minutes. They lost the game by 2. Now, it's not a guarantee if Kawhi's out there to end the second quarter, they don't give up those 2 points. It's not a guarantee that if Harden stays out there to end the third quarter, they don't give up those 2 points, leading to an overall -4 in 2 minutes during those 2 sequences in the game. But I think it's sound logic to just go, I got to have one of these guys on the court at all times. Harden, again, he was in foul trouble. Kawhi had 2. It just seemed like, we'll get out of the half. Don't worry about it. We're almost out of the half. We're almost out of the quarter. We'll be okay. We can get away with it. No, you can't. Those points matter. They went up 4 at the half. They could have been up 6 if they didn't go -2 there. They were up 3 heading into the fourth quarter. They could have been up 5 if they don't go -2 there. It adds up. I'm not saying that's the reason they lost the game, but it ties back into why weren't guys playing heavier minutes? That was a little bit perplexing to me. But again, are these the biggest reasons they lost the game? No. It's the 20 turnovers. That has nothing to do with Coach Lue. In fact, he had been preaching the entire time, the entire week. Number one priority is taking care of the basketball. They didn't do it. Second biggest reason, they got outworked on the glass. I don't think that's on Coach Lue. Third, Kawhi not being as aggressive. Now I went back and watched the tape. They doubled Kawhi a lot. They played some great defense, guys. I don't know if it was so much Kawhi not being aggressive. I mean, they did a good job trying to take him out. They did. I've heard other people criticize Coach Lue for not calling a timeout before Kawhi Leonard had that opportunity at the end of the fourth quarter. Was it the end of the fourth quarter or OT? The turnover against Jamal Murray in the far sideline. The Clippers are up by 1. I think that's end of the fourth, maybe before the Russ three-pointer. That turnover by Kawhi is so out of the ordinary. First of all, it could have been called a foul. There was a hand check. Kawhi tried to get his hand off of him and Jamal Murray's. And then Murray reached with his hand and got the ball, went off of Kawhi out of bounds. Not saying that's the reason they lost the game. They didn't call that foul. I'm not saying that. I am saying they had Kawhi with Jamal Murray on him to act like Coach Lue should have called a timeout and drew up a play there. F that. They had the matchup they wanted. It didn't go their way. But you can't tell me that's not good process. Kawhi having Jamal Murray on him, they cleared out. It's a one-on-one situation. You're taking that. It just didn't go their way that time. That's not on Coach Lue. So it's mixed with the criticism. See, somebody just comes in and says, Coach Lue is the problem. I give all these reasons that weren't on him. I'm not saying he had a great game. But it's not as simple as, oh, Coach Lue got out coached. Again, the biggest reasons they lost have nothing to do with Coach Lue. The turnovers, the offensive rebounds they gave up, Russ hitting a big three. That stuff, you're living with a Russ three in that situation. Is there some criticism? Yes. There always is when you lose, typically. There is when you win sometimes. Sometimes you get away with bad process and win anyways, and it's like, well, that's not going to work. Later on, that's going to come back to bite them. Something I've been talking about with the turnovers all year long. When they had 12 turnovers against Golden State in that game at Intuit Dome in the fourth quarter, yes, 12 in the fourth quarter, they put the press on. The Clippers have not done a good job when defenders get into their airspace. Even though they won that game, I was like, I don't like that. They just put some stuff on film for the next opponent to look at and say, oh, we can pick at this. And wouldn't you know, I think the Denver Nuggets probably watched that game because the Clippers had 20 turnovers, and that was the biggest reason they lost. And that doesn't have anything to do with Coach Lue. He literally said from the first practice heading into this matchup that we have to take care of the basketball. And that is by far the biggest reason they lost that game. I've heard people say, like, oh, their defense wasn't good enough. They held them to 98 points. They held Denver to 98 points in regulation. They shot 50% from the field. Denver shot 43%. You know how you lose that game? You give them more possessions through turnovers. You know how you get a team back into a game? When you're up 15, you have 9 turnovers in the second quarter. Is that on Coach Lue? I said that's a fair criticism, Deathstroke. I already went over that. I also think we'll see how this series turns out, because that may be a move for the future here with Coach Lue. If his guys end up being fresher in the long run in the series, and that's the reason they win, then I think we'll be okay with it. But if they lose the series and you are trying to hold back your stars from making or from having too much wear and tear early on in the series to where they can be fresher later, and it doesn't work, then yeah, then it's blowing up in their face. Before game one, not just a warm-up, he said it a week before. As soon as, I think their first practice was on Monday or Tuesday after they beat Golden State, the first thing he said about the matchup against Denver was, we have to take care of the basketball. The very first thing that Coach Lue said. And they didn't do it. That's on him. He's been preaching it. That's the biggest reason they lost. Oh, I need to send Joey Linn the link. I emailed it to him. I got to text it to him. Hold on, guys. Joey Linn is about to be joining us from Denver. He's there covering the team with SI Now. They didn't play like they have no idea what they're doing. Like, none of that is true. I went back and watched the entire game again. That's just overly simplistic. Completely. I think Kawhi knows he's not supposed to lose the basketball there to Jamal Murray. The Coach Lue, does he need to remind him of that? Join the show right now. From Denver, Colorado, we got boots on the ground. He's doing it for SI Now. It's Clippers beat reporter Joey Linn, the most well-spoken, the most eloquent. And we need some of that right now because the analysis and the over-analysis has been happening over the last 24 hours here, Joey. It's getting a little bit out of hand, but thanks for doing this here on Clippers Talk. How are you?
I'm doing good. You can hear me all right?
You sound great, man.
Good.
Well, I was just going through some of the criticism that's being heaped on Coach Lue, where I think it's fair, where I think it's unfair. I mentioned how, he didn't push his stars playing heavy minutes in this game. In fact, they played heavier minutes against Golden State in that overtime, where Kawhi was at 47, James Harden was at 48 by the end of it. Denver seemed to be chasing that win more. Is that how you read that situation where maybe Coach Lue was trying to hold back from burning his guys out early in the series? Was it the altitude? Why did he not push his guys a little bit more in game one?
Perhaps. I think the foul trouble was a little bit of an issue for James as well early. Kawhi obviously not as much. That wasn't necessarily something that got brought up a whole lot by Ty, and I think that's kind of by design. He's been very coy in the postseason. He obviously is always kind of that way in terms of really refusing to reveal any sort of game plan, ideology that he may have, whether pre or post game. So we're not going to get a whole lot from him in terms of his line of thinking, decision making wise. But that was something that stood out as well. Of course, particularly the times when those two guys were both off the floor at the same time. Not something that I think many people expected to see. But again, you're not going to get many straightforward answers from Ty throughout the course of a playoff series.
Ultimately, I'm kind of dividing up the blame pie and saying this is where the game was lost most. I think it's the 20 turnovers. How did you interpret that loss and where the Clippers let go of it?
Yeah, I think that's certainly the obvious answer. That's the answer that Ty had. That's the answer that Kawhi had. James had the same answer as well. The question that really wasn't answered was why did they turn the ball over 20 times? I think there was certainly a sense among the team that a lot of those giveaways were self-inflicted. I think Ty said it today at the hotel. He believes that 11 of the 20 giveaways were self-inflicted. They were unforced turnovers that the Clippers had in game one. So that's really the story of the game. That's something that the Clippers, I wrote it in my story last night, is something that it gives them confidence going forward. They feel as if, they lost a 2-point game on the road, overtime contest, despite having what Ty described as 11 unforced turnovers in the game. So it's something that they have a lot of confidence they can correct. And they're going to have an opportunity to do that in game two and bring a 1-1 series back into a dome.
Yeah, ultimately, if they win game two and they got a little momentum heading back home, you're fine. I know if they lose that game, a lot of people are going to feel like, well, game one was the one you had to have. You're up by 15. Like, that's the one you have to steal home court advantage in. How did Kawhi look to you? He looked especially tired to me. That third quarter sub where he came out 6.5 minutes in, and I think he was only at 25 or 26 minutes at that point. That seemed unusual to me.
Yeah, so Ty pushed back against the idea that Kawhi and others were affected by altitude or affected by the start time or anything of that nature. And even if, like I've mentioned, even if he is pushing back, even if he isn't admitting that that's the case, doesn't necessarily mean that that's 100% true. But we really didn't get any indication from Kawhi, from Ty, from anybody else that Kawhi was dealing with fatigue or dealing with the altitude or start time, like I mentioned. But I will say for sure, as everybody was able to see, he did not look like the same player who finished out that 8-game winning streak that the Clippers were on to close the season, when he was playing, some of his best basketball in a Clippers uniform. And I think that's certainly a little bit disappointing for the Clippers, because you go into a playoff series, what's the one thing that fans, analysts, players themselves have been saying? You get a healthy Kawhi Leonard, we feel like we can compete with anybody. Well, the reason why people say that is because he has been one of the best playoff performers of the modern era, and by many metrics ever, really. His ability to rise to the occasion in the playoffs is what gives the Clippers confidence that they can compete with anybody in a 7-game series. Now, with that being said, I think it's also important to not get too ahead of ourselves after game one, talking about what he is or is not going to be able to do throughout the course of a 7-game series. You listen to the way that the Nuggets players are talking about him, the way that David Adelman talked about him after the game, and again today at Nuggets walkthrough. There is certainly a level of respect and reverence over on that side for what they know he is capable of. I mean, Jokic went as far to say that they were lucky that he turned the ball over 7 times. He didn't really attribute to anything that they were doing defensively. So I think that's important to mention as well. Was Kawhi at his best in game one? Absolutely not. But I think there's a sense on both sides right now in this series that he's going to be much better going forward.
I believe you were in the locker room with Russell Westbrook, and I couldn't tell for sure exactly what he said or what he meant by this, but he did say something to the effect of, and correct me here, when we win the series, I might address my time with the Clippers. Am I mischaracterizing that? It sounded like he wanted to say something, but he knew it was too early in the series. While he hit a big shot against them, while he had some big moments, he might do that after the series should they win.
So I understand that interpretation. That is not how I interpreted it. The way that I viewed it was he was essentially being asked about the overarching narrative of him facing his former team, going against his former team, and he wanted to downplay that and essentially say the Nuggets haven't done anything yet. We're not going to talk about any of that until we take care of our business. Now, of course, both teams feel confident in their ability to win this series. I certainly don't expect Russell Westbrook to say, when we lose this series, of course he thinks his team is going to have a chance to win. They're the higher seed. They have the best player in the world. So there's a lot of confidence there. I didn't interpret it as him thinking that he has something, locked and loaded in the chamber that he's going to fire off, once the Nuggets win this series. I interpreted it as him saying, we're not going to talk about anything other than the game at hand until the series is over. That's really how I interpreted it. And I think he's prepared to not take the bait from the media throughout the course of this series. He's very much aware that people are going to ask him about going against his former team, about going against his former, longtime teammate, longtime friend in James Harden. So really that's how I read it, was him saying, hey, listen, we're not going to talk about that once we win the series. If we want to, reflect and look back on things of that nature, it would be more of an appropriate conversation for that time. But as of right now, I mean, he said it. We haven't done anything yet. We did what we were supposed to do, win one game on our home floor, and the focus now shifts to Monday.
What's the level of confidence with this Denver Nuggets team now? Because they had won 3 in a row with David Adelman. They needed to win those games to hold on to the 4 spot. Now they win game 1. Is this a group that is rallying around kind of the adversity they've been dealing with? Are they coming together? Because obviously a lot of those core pieces from the championship year are still there. They know how to win.
Yeah, so it's an interesting dynamic. I wouldn't necessarily say that Malone's removal was the galvanizing moment for this team. I think a lot of those guys in that locker room, particularly the guys who have been there for a long time, like Jokic, like Jamal Murray, they had a real level of love and appreciation for Michael Malone and what he meant for their careers. But it has been said by a few players that when something that drastic happens, right, like a coaching change 3 games before the postseason, teams can go 2 different directions. They can splinter or they can come together. And I think the hope of ownership in Denver was that they would come together, even if it wasn't necessarily Michael Malone's fault that they weren't playing up to standards. I think there was a sense that a shakeup was needed, and I think we've seen that. And Adelman, I've been really impressed by what he has done down the stretch of games. I mean, you saw it in game 1. Michael Porter Jr. played 3 minutes in the fourth quarter, did not play at all in the overtime period. And that's a guy who they're paying a lot of money. That's a guy who, if they're going to get to where they hope to get to and win their first championship since 2023, he's going to have to be a big part of that. But he went away from him. And he said it again today. He said, I was really finding myself questioning myself down the stretch of the game when he realized the defensive adjustments the Clippers were making, of course, playing off of Russ. Why don't I have Michael Porter Jr. in this game right now? He should be in the corner. But he said, I trusted the group that was out there. They were playing well. They were on a run. And, he says, was that the right decision? I don't know. All I know is we won the game. So I think there's a lot of respect in that locker room for him and his willingness to make hard decisions like that. He's not playing egos. He's not playing favorites. He's not, playing seniority. He is playing the guys who he thinks are going to win him the game.
So earlier you were in the media scrum with Coach Lue and posted him talking about rotations in game 2. And he said, quote, we have another half of what we did last night. We have another half. If it doesn't work, then something different will be done. What's the most likely thing in your mind that changes if things aren't working in that first half?
I thought that was a really interesting statement from Ty, and I'm really not quite sure what to make of it because we have seen Ty Lue, start a player in one playoff series that may have been a DMP entirely the series prior. My mind always goes to Pat Bev in that Maverick series, right? He was not a good matchup against Luka, but he obviously was huge against Mitchell and against Booker. So Ty has shown the willingness to go away from established players that he trusts and then go back to them when the moment calls for it. So it's hard for me to predict what that adjustment may be. And I think part of the reason why is that a playoff series takes on so many different forms on a game to game basis. Of course, you look at game 1, the way that Denver attacked Norm and Bogdanovich defensively, certainly something that stands out. So I think that's something that's kind of on my radar. I know it's certainly something that's on, Ty Lue's radar. He's not oblivious to the fact that that was the case. I asked him after the game if he felt, particularly with Bogdanovich, because he only played about 13 minutes, didn't make a shot, if the way that Denver targeted him defensively affected him on the offensive end. Ty said no. He didn't feel like that was the case. He just thinks that getting into the rhythm of the playoff series, sometimes that can happen. He says he's not worried about Bogey. He's not worried about Norm. He thinks those 2 guys are going to make shots. But to that point, he has shown the willingness in previous years to go away from trusted guys. I'm not necessarily predicting him to go away from either one of those 2 players, but it wouldn't surprise me if that was the next, quote unquote, major adjustment that was made.
Do you think this Clippers team can win 4 games against Denver if all of a sudden Norm is in a limited role? Because my thinking is, yeah, you can get away with it. Like if you played Nico Batum late in that game in game 1 instead of Norman Powell, maybe they win that game. But can you win 4 of them if Norm isn't having a significant impact is something I'm wondering about.
I think so. I think because you saw that a lot down the stretch of the season, particularly once Kawhi got back and really upped his volume and upped his aggression and really the way that he was attacking those games. I mean, Kawhi admitted it. Everybody else did as well. Those were playoff games that the Clippers played the last 8 games of the season. They needed every single one of those wins to, be sitting here in Denver right now. So you saw Norm, his production kind of fluctuated down the stretch of the regular season. And it was something Ty was asked about a lot. And his answer was pretty consistent. He said, we do not care who is getting the shots. who is getting the minutes? We need to win the game. And Ty was specifically asked, do you need to see everybody firing on all cylinders heading into the postseason? Of course, you want to win the game, but is there a level, a sense that you need to see Norm have, 20 points while Kawhi, Zoo, and James are also doing their normal production? And Ty essentially said no. He said we don't need to see that. We need to see whatever gets us a win at the end of the day. So I understand the question. I understand how important Norm has been to the Clippers throughout the course of the season, but I certainly would not say that they need his the best version of him in order to beat this Nuggets team. I think what they certainly can't have, though, is Norm out there trying to do too much, trying to kind of force himself to be who he thinks he needs to be for this Clippers team. Because I think that's where you see him get into trouble, and exactly what we saw in game one, where he's trying to force things. That's when the turnovers happen. And another concern of mine is that he's not going to get those same calls a lot of the times that he gets during the regular season, where, he gets in, he tries to rip through, he honestly, he feels a little bit of contact. He goes straight into a shooting motion to try to get that shot, hoping for a whistle, and then, ends up being a turnover or really just a non-competitive shot. Like, those are the things that the Clippers cannot have from him. I think what they need to see more so is what Ty refers to a lot. And it was that 2023 playoff series against Phoenix, where of course Norm had some big scoring games, but what Ty really loved was the way he competed on the glass, the way he competed defensively. That's what you need to see in a playoff series. It's about winning the game. It's not about Norman Powell scoring 20 points. So I think that hopefully answers your question. Of course, they want to have his offensive production, but if he's going to be out there, he needs to be doing things that impact winning.
Lastly, Joey, is there going to be any disciplinary action, or is this just a fun little storyline with what happened with Jeff Van Gundy going for the ball after Kawhi had it swiped out of his hands by Jamal Murray?
I certainly don't anticipate any disciplinary action. I think, I have a lot of respect for the way that Jokic and the Nuggets addressed that situation after the game. Yoke was a little bit sarcastic about it, talking about, I guess that's part of the game. I guess people are allowed to do that. It's the way that they slow down the game. He says, because he's a real savvy player, right? Like, he's always, if he wants to buy an extra second, he's going to reach down, pretend to tie his shoe. He actually mentioned that. He's like, when I mess around with my shoes after, before an inbound, the league is like, get the ball in. But, Jeff Van Gundy and Jason Powell are able to, wrestle the ball away from me, and the NBA doesn't do anything about it. I think it was kind of a more so of a lighthearted thing. Like, CB was poking fun at Yoke for, being out muscled by JVG. So I don't expect it to become, bigger than it already is. But yeah, certainly something that caught the attention of a lot of people.
He is the well-spoken one, the articulate one. That would be Joey Linn from SI Now. Follow him at Joey Linn with 2 N's and an underscore at the end. He's in Denver covering the Clippers for SI Now. Joey, thanks for doing this here on Clippers Talk. Really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Pleasure as always.
Be good and happy Easter, my friend.
You as well. Thank you.
There goes Joey Linn from Denver. Man and boots on the ground as I'll plug back in now to the microphone. All right, Clipper Nation. So, Joey Linn talking about Norman Powell there, I think that was interesting because obviously a lot of people, and Joey knew it too, are speculating on whether or not Norman Powell could be the move by Coach Lue in this series. If they get down in the first half, would that be the lever that he pulls to try to take things in a different direction for the Clippers? Would it be Nico Batum getting more minutes, DJ, a combination of both? I think part of the problem is the guy he'd like to play, if Norm is struggling, would be Bogdanovich, but he struggled as well. So one of those two guys simply has to get it going, I think, in this series. One of those two have to be better shooting-wise for this Clippers team, or they're in trouble. There's a reason that they have shot the highest three-point percentage coming into the playoffs the last 21 games. They've both been a part of that. Nico Batum has as well. Kawhi's been really hot, but this is a team that relies on that shooting to loosen up the defense. And while they didn't take a ton of threes yesterday, they did outshoot the Denver Nuggets, I think 36% from the outside to 33%. But Bogey was 0 of 3. Norm was 5 of 12 and just 2 of 6 from the outside. Now, 2 of 6, you make your next couple, you're at 50%. It's not the end of the world, but he played 37 minutes. He just didn't look comfortable out there. Like Joey said, he forced some shots. I'm interpreting what Joey said. It felt like he forced a few shots to try to get himself into the game. Early in the shot clock, 3-pointers. I think I watched one in the second quarter during that stretch where the Clippers gave up that 13-2 run right before the end of the half. One of those two guys has to get going. Preferably both, because they've been very good. The only way that you're going to have a ton of success in the playoffs, and you're supposed to be one of the better teams, is if your guys continue to perform at the high level they have been in the regular season. It has to carry over, or else you're not the same team. Your predictions and the prognosticating going on and people talking about the Clippers being a dark horse to come out of the Western Conference, all of that is built upon the evidence we have seen in the regular season and how guys have been playing there. If it doesn't translate to the postseason, then they're a different team, period. Here was Coach Lue and that audio we talked about with Joey Linn earlier today in the media scrum.
With the same rotations, you make adjustments, changes along the way, see what's working best. You stick with
Brad Turner asking the question about rotations.
You stick with the same rotations, you make adjustments, changes along the way, see what's working best for you and this team.
We have another half of what we did last night.
What does that mean?
We have another half. If it doesn't work, then something different will be done.
So there is pressure on some guys to perform in the first half tomorrow night, or else things could change pretty quickly with rotations. And I like that. Don't wait to go down 0-2. If it's not working in the first half, push a different button. Pull a lever. I don't know if you can afford to. I know people love to say, oh, it ain't a series till the Clippers get down 0-2. Now we got them right where we want them. This is Denver. This is a team with championship pedigree. You get down 0-2 to them, there's like a 95% chance you're losing the series maybe. I mean, the stats back this up. Maybe it's only 90%. I know the Clippers are different. They've done it before. That was 2021. It's a different team. You're playing a different team. Luka and the Dallas Mavericks, you were the heavy favorites. They went down 0-2 at home, so they were in an even worse spot. I'm telling you, Denver is tough, and they're good enough to beat you, and I don't think they're a team you can give away games against and still end up winning the series. That's my concern. Felt like they gave away game 1. They win game 2, they're fine. They go down 0-2, you're in deep trouble even going back to Intuit Dome. Because now you got to win both, and Denver will just be looking to get the split. You don't want to be in that uphill battle where you're chasing them the entire time, ice skating uphill because they go up 2-0 on you. It's just not ideal. Here was more from Coach Lue earlier today. This comes from Law Murray at the NU.
Just being better all around the board. You know, we know we can do some things better defensively. Offensively, we have the blueprint, and we just got to execute it, you know, time and time again.
Got to be better across the board. We have the blueprint. We have to execute. Execution was the biggest issue, not strategy.
Just being better all around the board. You know, we know we can do some things better defensively. Offensively, we have the blueprint, and we just got to execute it, you know, time and time again.
Here was Ivica Zubac a little bit earlier today, talking about battling with Nikola Jokic.
You got this matchup with Nikola, and like it got really physical. You know, there was one time you drew an offense foul. Next play, you know, he gets an offense foul drawn on you. Like, what's it like dealing with his not just his physicality, but just the fact that I'm not want to say he's flopping, but he's very theatrical with the contact that he draws.
For me, it's fun. Going against one of the best players in the league. It's fun. It's physical. I like physical matchups, and he always brings it. He plays hard every possession. He's physical, and it's a big challenge for me. So it's been fun.
How do you stay poised in the heat of all that?
don't know what to tell you. It's not a big problem for me.
I mean, that's what you want to hear from Ivica Zubac there. Get used to it. The Nikola Jokic selling foul stuff going to continue to happen. I actually saw, I think I have the right Reddit thread here. Somebody posted 3 of the most egregious flops he had in the ball game. First of all, I have the utmost respect for Nikola Jokic. Does he sell contact and exaggerate? Yes. Has James Harden done that? Yes. So we're not really in a position as Clippers fans to point the finger too much, pot, meet, kettle. Like, if it works, I guess it's a smart thing to do. But I would just want to show you, because while I don't think the Clippers lost the game because of the whistle, I also don't think they got a beneficial whistle in this ball game either. We'll share 3 of them here. Look at this. Tangled up with Ben Simmons here. I want to highlight it right there. This is, yeah. Like, that is him absolutely initiating that contact, trying to turn it into something it wasn't. Completely. He sold that. He's grabbing Ben with both of his hands, trying to make it look like Ben's hooking him. Don't love it. Got to be honest about that. I'll show you another one. These could be. Here's another one. This time, he gets tangled up with Chris Dunn. And he's a superstar, and superstars get superstar calls. Nothing has changed. Now, Chris Dunn did... See, he's anticipating Jokic going full speed. Jokic is smart enough to slow down here, but Dunn is already committed to absorbing what he thinks is going to be Jokic running into him hard. So he puts his hands up to brace himself, and Jokic sells it. And jumps like, come on. It works. You roll your eyes, but it works. It is, fortunately. Was right after Ivica Zubac actually got the benefit of a call where Jokic was called for an offensive foul. Unfortunately, the very next possession on the other end, he gets called for an offensive foul against Jokic here, who obviously sells the contract.
Being called on Jokic, that's his second.
It's just, Jokic falls backwards. Does Zoo get his hands on him and shove him? Yeah. Does Jokic sell it? Yeah. It's basically, it's like one guy all of a sudden, after they've been battling and fighting, and we just heard from Ivica Zubac talking about the wrestling match they were having during WrestleMania at Ball Arena. And now all of a sudden, Jokic, while they've been battling and wrestling this entire time, just decides to take a dive like this. The Zubac is just like, come on. Again, the Clippers have James Harden. He's been known to sell a few calls too. Denver has been frustrated with him in the past for selling calls. I'm still trying to see if we have more of the extended conversation from earlier today with Coach Lue. I know we do have, as we wait for Robert Flom, audio from Denver's side we'll get to in a little bit. David Adelman and maybe the best player in the game, Aaron Gordon, from yesterday. Honestly, when you account for both sides and the big plays he was making and the putbacks, just superstar role player stuff. He outscored Kawhi in the game. Actually, Celtics in 5. I prefaced it by saying this is not the reason they lost the game immediately. But sure. Take it out of context. Just showing some of the stuff that's going on. Maybe he gets called or doesn't get these calls, I should say, in game 2. The Clippers definitely didn't get a great whistle, but the Denver Nuggets led the league in free throws attempted on the season. So I told you to be aware of that heading in, and it played out that way. They got up 27. They missed 6, including Jokic missing 2 late in the game, but they ended up taking 11 more free throws. Clippers knew that coming in, though. Coach Lue talked about it post-game. Said it. We knew. We weren't exactly going to get a good whistle. Oh, this is my bad. I don't know if Robert Flom got the link. The last time the Clippers lost, they went on an 8-game winning streak. Here's to another 8. There's a good point. That'd be pretty sweet. So they'd win this series in 5 and then sweep the OKC Thunder in the second round if they won the next 8 games. Not going to happen. And now there's Bastian Schweinsteiger in here. How's the run the offense through Kawhi crowd doing tonight? I mean, pretty good. Like, the amount of double teams that went his way that it opened up stuff for other guys, it was effective. The turnovers weren't. Kawhi had a bad game. Bastian Schweinsteiger for a while has been a hard guy over Kawhi. I think we can like both. We don't have to be a house divided here with the Clippers, but after losses, I guess it turns into that sometimes. People are frustrated. Can understand that. Believe me. But they win game 2. Oh, this chat will change its tune so quickly. Bastian Schweinsteiger, who is known as a troll, but more importantly known as the Mush. Why? Because the amount of times he's been wrong with a prediction, and I mean woefully wrong, just completely out of his mind, out of his gourd type stuff that ends up blowing up in his face. That's why we call him the Mush here.
Eddie Mush was a degenerate gambler. He was also the biggest loser in the whole world.
Bastian or Eddie Mush? Okay, I need to make sure to hear that again. Hold on.
Eddie Mush was a degenerate gambler. He was also the biggest loser in the whole world. They called him Mush because everything he touched turned to mush.
That's Bastian Schweinsteiger for you. Somebody who's not the Mush typically comes on after a Clippers loss. Some call him the Eeyore of Clippers media. That would be Robert Flom. Big shot Bob Flom joins us from the East Coast to talk about Game 1 and help preview Game 2 and what adjustments can be made. Robert Flom, of course, with the Lob, the Jam, the podcast on 213 Hoops. Big shot. How we doing?
I'm good, Adam. How are you doing?
I'm all right. Appreciate you doing this. I just got done. I think I listened to it last night. Honestly, I was like, I'm not even going to listen to anything else. I'm going to wait till tomorrow. I'll be at the gym working out. It'll be a better setting for me to work out some of my anger issues while I'm listening to the podcast, reviewing what happened in Game 1. I couldn't put down what you guys uploaded last night after the game. You, Dr. Schaap, Lucas Hand, of course, our fearless leader on 213 Hoops. I think you guys went 112 minutes or something like that, or an hour and 12 minutes.
Yeah, hour 12, yeah.
The thing that struck me most was, and you brought it up first, and I thought about it during the game, but I didn't touch upon it much last night, and I kind of just cruised by it. But I remember tweeting by the 8-minute mark of the fourth quarter, put Zoo in, and he still wasn't back in the ball game. And then you brought up the minutes distribution and how many fewer minutes the Stars played last night comparatively to how many games or how many minutes they played in overtime against the Golden State Warriors less than a week ago.
Yeah.
That was a little bit shocking to me. Your interpretation of what Coach Lue was up to there.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Ty Lue's been the coach here for a few years. He's been in several playoff series, and he's always somebody who starts series a little bit slow. He's not somebody who reveals all his cards right away. He's somebody who is comfortable, quite honestly, losing the first game of the series. In 2021, the year they made the Western Conference Finals, of course, they lose game ones to both the Mavericks and the Jazz, and came back to win those series. I think agree with him or not. I think a lot of Clippers fans are frustrated at kind of the lower minutes and at the lack of kind of like interesting or kind of out of the box strategies in game one. Like that is Ty Lue's MO, is he does not like going full throttle early in series. And I think that was very true yesterday. He kind of, usually eases into series. And I mean, the minutes thing was a little, puzzling, I think, for a lot of people. But I think that's just kind of classic Ty Lue, and I would expect that to change as soon as game two.
So he came out earlier today, spoke with the media, and said, we have another half of what we did last night. We have another half. If it doesn't work, then something different will be done. So he's giving the initial game plan a game and a half. What do you think the most likely change would be if they get off to a slow start in game two?
It really depends what side of the court it's on. If it's offense, I mean, I think we could see Chris Dunn swapped out of the starting lineup. Even though I don't think Chris Dunn was the issue at all in game one. He was very good. He was, the Clippers at like fourth, fifth best player maybe. He was left open for threes, but he made a couple, and he was just, as always, very good on defense. But like if they get off to a slow start on offense in game two, the Nuggets continue to leave him open. He's just, it's not as impactful a game on defense. I think you could see, I would guess, Nick Batum starting in his place in the second half. It could be Derrick Jones Jr. Before the series, I was considering the idea of like maybe adding Bogdan Bogdanovic as well. Considering how he played in game one, I don't think that's probably feasible. But I think if it's in terms of just pure rotation adjustments, probably it would be done out of the starting lineup in the third quarter. But it really depends. I mean, if their offense is great and it's their defense that's lacking, I mean, then I don't know. Maybe you go Derrick Jones Jr. to Batum instead of Norm Powell. So it could go either way. I mean, we know Harden, Kawhi, and Zoo are going to be out there playing huge minutes basically regardless. It's the other two spots that I think are a little bit more up in the air.
My question is, can they win this series if Norman Powell doesn't have a significant impact? Can they beat this Denver Nuggets team without Norman Powell making his mark? Is he a ride or die guy, or is he somebody that can be replaced?
To me, he is not a ride or die guy. I mean, I've notoriously never been super high on Norm Powell. He's had a great season. Nobody would say otherwise. But at the base level, he is a fairly flawed player. He is really good at a couple things. He's not very good at a lot of other things. And generally speaking, in the playoffs, the more well-rounded you are, the better. It's harder to play you off the court. It's harder to take advantage of you. So to me, like I think they need one of him or Bogdan Bogdanovic. I think like if Norm Powell has an off series, if Bogey has a good series, the Clippers could win. If both of them are bad, I think it gets tough. It's tough to find enough offense and enough shooting. They could still win if both of them aren't good. Like as long as Dunn and Derrick Jones Jr. and Nick Batum are hitting threes, like if those three guys are all still playing well, and like you have Harden, Kawhi, Zoo as relatively steady, like maybe you can win the series without Norman Bogey, but I think they need at least one of them. Yes, if Norm continues to not be great, like I think they could still win the series. They almost won game one and he was terrible. So like they could still win. But I mean, to win 4 games, they're going to need at least a couple big Norm Powell games. And if not Norm, a couple Bogey games.
So when it comes to Coach Lue, you're saying there's a method to his madness. You may disagree with it, but the reason he wasn't playing guys heavy minutes, it wasn't just the game got sped up on him and he forgot or anything like that. He's trying to play the long game, maybe?
I think there was a little bit of that. I think in general, yes, his strategy is not to go too hard in game ones. And I think, again, for the Clippers, who are a very old team, Overplaying these guys in game one is probably not the best idea in a vacuum. But I think there may have been a little bit of I think he got a little bit maybe too cute with the Ben Simmons minutes. And Ben had a really good game. I mean, I was like a lot of people have been pretty down on Ben Simmons, rightfully so. He's not been great the past few weeks for the Clippers after dealing with his injury. But his minutes in game one were quite good. And I think Ty Lue's like, I'll get an extra minute or two here with Ben and give Zoo an extra breather. And I that may have been more of an in-game choice. But I think in general, I would say a lot of the lower minutes and kind of that tactic of like having like multiple of those guys out at once, I think that was a pre-made decision for game one.
If it were up to you, would you go with a different starting lineup to start game two?
No, I would not. I mean, I'm a noted Chris Dunn supporter. I think the thing
Dr. Schaap.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've surpassed Dr. Schaap with my Chris Dunn belief. Don't tell him that. I think one, his defense is phenomenal, and two, he does enough well on offense outside of shooting that I think he can stick in the series, right? Like he had those two great cuts in the first or second quarter, where he made those nice lanes around the rim when they doubled Zoo. He's a good passer. He's not an amazing ball handler, but he's probably the third best ball handler on the team. He's a better ball handler than Norm Powell or Derrick Jones Jr. or Nick Batum or like a lot of these other guys. Like he can at least bring the ball up the court fairly reliably, get the offenses into sets in a way that like those guys, can't really do. So I would stick with Chris Dunn. I mean, I think if he is getting left wide open on offense and missing shots and the Clippers offense is really struggling, I think you have to consider alternatives. But it's again, like a lot of people would clamor for Derrick Jones Jr. It's not like he's that much of a better shooter than Chris Dunn. He's better at other things on offense, like slashing and cutting and out in the open court. But like in terms of half court offense, when he's left open from three, he's not a huge upgrade. The Nuggets will leave him wide open from three as well most of the time.
Yeah, but what about Norman Powell? Like, if there was to be a move, I've been saying all year, I think they're hiding Nico Batum in bubble wrap for a playoff series against a team with some size. And the team I brought up was Denver, one of the teams. I just see that as if you had him in over Norm, it gives you one more inch. First of all, he could guard both their two top players a little bit, both of them, Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic. Now, he ended up playing, I think, just 24 minutes last night, Nico, and he was coming off an injury. But that's one of the criticisms I think that you could have. When they're getting all those offensive rebounds late, could he have been in there instead of Norman Powell? What exactly are you losing? Nico was 3 of 6 from the outside. He hit a ridiculous 3 in the face of Christian Braun.
Yeah.
He's clutch. His defense is infinitely better. His playmaking is better. What exactly would you be losing having him in over Norm Powell, who played 37 minutes?
I mean, Norm is more dynamic on offense. If you give him the ball, he's better at creating shots. He's a guy who can put pressure on the rim, which is a useful thing against the Nuggets, right? Like Jokic, notoriously not a great rim protector. He was even in a little bit of foul trouble in game one, and the Clippers did not go at him enough. So like
that was another issue. Yes.
Yeah. So like I don't want to knock Norm's offensive game because he's a great shooter and he's a really good slasher and secondary attacker. But in a slow half court game where Norm is struggling, like I think Nick Batum from a catch and shoot 3 standpoint is probably just as good as Norm Powell. And as you said, he's a much better defender. And even though he's not a great rebounder, he does more of the boxing out and he just has more size on the court. For like Aaron Gordon, Christian Braun, Michael Porter Jr., and even Russ, like all these guys were getting offensive rebounds. So yeah, like I think Nico is over Norm is a good substitute. It just comes down to like where the Clippers struggling. Like, is it on the glass? Is it on offense? Is it on defense? If they're playing badly on offense, I don't know if taking out Norm for Nico is going to help that much. But yeah, I mean, it really just depends on how the game is looking and how the matchups are looking. And again, like I think they do need one of Norm or Bogey to be really good in the series in order to win.
Yeah, and I don't mean to say that, like, obviously they're very different on the offensive end, and Norm adds a lot of different ways to score. I just mean specifically last night.
Yeah.
Okay, Norm doesn't have it. Nico does, and Nico offers all this defense. I mean, he's not a great rebounder for his size, but he still would have been better in that situation than
Correct.
Norm.
Yeah, I mean, I think specifically for game one, I would have closed with Nick Batum over Norm Powell. And I mean, and we talked about this a little bit on the pod, but I mean, I think, Derrick Jones Jr. was in and Nick Batum were in for a lot of the fourth quarter, and Dunn and Norm were brought in pretty late and they were cold. Like they've been on the bench for like 10, 12 minutes of game time and probably like 25 or 30 in real time. At that point, I probably would have just closed with Nico and DJJ just for that reason, if nothing else, even though I thought Dunn was better than Derrick Jones yesterday. But yeah, I mean, I definitely would have closed with Nico over Norm and then one of Dunn or Derrick Jones Jr.
What did you think of Norm being used as the rover because his man was Russell Westbrook? He was completely playing off of him and the early doubling in possessions that they were doing.
I don't like it. It's Norm is probably this team's second worst on ball defender behind Bogey of any of the guys who they're actually playing. But he doesn't have like amazing instincts on defense, and he's also just offers no size at the rim. Like if it's him and Harden as the last line of defense, and Harden again speaking yesterday just to foul trouble, just yesterday's game was in foul trouble, they're not going to offer any rim protection or anything compared to like a Derrick Jones Jr. or a Nick Batum or whoever who like have just more size to just be there at the rim with their hands up. So like I didn't love that decision. Like if you're going to involve Norm, I would actually have him like up top and have him be one of the guys kind of doubling and then scrambling. But yeah, I did not. We talked about again a little bit on the public. I didn't love how early they were doubling. I didn't love who they were doubling with. Like you have Dunn and Kawhi doubling, that takes their two best defenders out of the main action once you start playing 3-on-2. So yeah,
I rewatched the fourth and overtime, and
that's
agree.
brutal. I don't know why you do that to yourself.
Just want to make sure I got it right because, mine can be deceiving sometimes. You think you saw something that you didn't. For instance, I don't think Kawhi had as bad of a game as I thought with some of the turnovers. In fact, Carlo Jimenez called in and went into the specific turnovers. Like they gave him one where it looked like he didn't even have possession, where he was trying to save a ball from going out of bounds. They're like, oh, that's turnover on Kawhi. Like, the two with Ben Simmons are just miscues between those two guys that haven't played together much.
Yeah.
There's 3 turnovers. The one where he got the rebound and thought he got pushed in the back by Aaron Gordon late and the ball goes off of Kawhi. And he's like, why wasn't that a foul? There's 4 turnovers. It wasn't as bad when you go through the specifics.
It's interesting. I do agree with you to some extent. I would say 2 kind of counterpoints. One is, in addition to the turnovers, I think there were a lot of passes he missed, which is different. There were a lot of times that they were sending doubles or help, and he was missing open players. And like sometimes those are guys who are not great on offense, like Chris Dunn or Ben Simmons or whoever. You still need to make those reads because it opens up the court for everybody else. And he would just keep dribbling, and then the Nuggets would be able to reset, and like 5 seconds are off the clock, and then he's back out on the perimeter, and you basically have the possession again, but it's only 8 seconds left. It puts the Clippers in a lot of stress. So, like, I think in addition to the turnovers, he just missed a ton of passes. And unfortunately, like Kawhi Leonard, that's one of his issues. Maybe it's his only on-court basketball issue.
I think it is.
Availability aside, he's just not a great passer playmaker. He's improved over the years. It's just not something that comes naturally to him. He doesn't have that kind of passing playmaking gene. The other thing I would say, and somebody was talking about this, it may have been LA Clippers film on Twitter, is that some of them were more of like a mindset issue rather than an execution issue. Like the ones to Ben Simmons, like those are situations where like, yes, the turnovers were bad. And like a lot of that was just on miscommunication. Kawhi and Ben Simmons have not played together much, etc. both of those were situations where Kawhi should have just attacked. There was not really a reason for him to give the ball up to Ben Simmons anyway in those situations. Again, I mentioned earlier there were situations he missed those passes. And those ones, like one of them was like this weird, like kind of alley-oop towards Ben Simmons, who was like 8 feet away from the rim. There was a guy there. It just didn't make much sense as a basketball play. Even though some of that turnover was on Ben Simmons, it was also just Kawhi should have either just shot it or kept on driving to the rim. And there was some of that, like he just seemed off. Like he seemed like it was just maybe it was because the break was so long. He had a week off of NBA games. It was just a little bit out of sync for him. But yeah, like it wasn't like the turnovers so much as I think like the process and some of those issues in terms of like missing passes and not being aggressive enough. He was 9 of 15. His shot looked good. He honestly probably was not shooting enough. So yeah.
The fadeaway he hit in overtime was ridiculous over a triple team, by the way.
Yeah.
He had another one over a double team of Aaron Gordon and Jokic in the fourth quarter. And I'm like, I don't know. Maybe we're making a little bit too much of this Kawhi Leonard performance because he went the first 6.5 minutes of the third quarter with only taking one shot. So I went back and watched that. And they were doubling and they were playing it beautifully, honestly. Like he would have really had to force something. But let's say he just gets 6 points during that time instead. Well, now he's at 28. And like I think we're looking at the game a little bit differently. I don't think it was so bad from Kawhi Leonard. Yes, he's a superstar. We grade him differently. I expect him to be better in game 2. Do you think this is a series, though, where Denver could pose some real issues with Kawhi? Because as I mentioned, they had stretches where they guarded him really well.
Absolutely. I mean, I think Aaron Gordon is a really tough matchup for him, one of the best in the NBA. And Kawhi is good enough; he can score on anybody, right? Like he is that good on offense. But Aaron Gordon is a guy who can make life difficult for him. And as you said, like they have smart double teams and help against him. To me, this is really a Harden and Zubac series on offense. And like there are games where Kawhi is feeling it, and when he has mismatches, and you have to give him the ball. I mean, and players of his stature have to get a certain amount of touches anyway. But to me, this is not a series where I feel like the Clippers should be feeding Kawhi super heavily in ISO. I think the Nuggets defend that very well. Their struggles are more in pick and roll and playing in space. And that's much more James Harden's deal than Kawhi Leonard's. And again, when Norm Powell is feeling good, that's something he can do. Because when he runs high pick and roll, he's not a great passer. But like when he gets, a straight line drive to the rim or has a little bit of space to do his pull-ups, he's a very effective player. So I think that like, yes, like Kawhi will obviously be given his fair share of touches. But to me, like this will be a difficult series to win if Kawhi Leonard is kind of the main option in a way. Like I think this is a series where like I know Harden likes being the playmaker. I know like that's his MO. He's been so good at that this year. They need scoring Harden in this series. Like he scored 32 and honestly he could have scored more in game 1. And I think those shots are going to be there for him. I think the floaters and the step back threes, like they have nobody who can guard him really on their team. Christian Brown is their best option. He's a fine defender. He's not a Harden stopper. Same thing with like, Russ, who can be good on ball, but like gets screened easily and can make gambles and all that sort of stuff. Like this is a series where Harden should be able to eat. And same thing with Zoo in the pick and roll. So like to me, those are the two linchpins on offense. And then Kawhi is more like when you get mismatches, you feed him every once in a while, and like then you close with him maybe. And he comes in and kind of just takes the game over with mid-range jumpers. So, like obviously you can't just ignore Kawhi and not go to him. But to me, like he's not going to be the lead scorer in this series for the Clippers if they're playing their offense correctly.
Do you think the Clippers win game 2? Do you think they respond, and how do they do it?
I do. I think the Clippers do win game 2. And how do they do it? I don't think they have 20 turnovers again. I hope they don't have 20 turnovers again. I think like, and again, not to keep plugging our own podcast, the Nuggets played harder than the Clippers. There were like 3 or 4 different instances where there were loose balls and the Clippers were going after it, but the Nuggets were going much harder for them, and they came up with every single loose ball. Not just the offensive rebounds, but there were plays where like Kawhi and Chris Dunn and Norm Powell knocked the ball away, and it was on the ground, and the Nuggets just kept coming up with it. So, I think the Clippers are going to come out with more intensity in game 2. I think Ty Lue is going to play his key players more minutes in game 2. And I think that the Clippers are just going to get the win through those things. I think they are the better team. I like watching game 1 for people who are optimistic about the Clippers winning this series. I think game 1 was very encouraging. Like, they had a not very good Kawhi game. They had abysmal Norm Powell and Bogdan Bogdanovic games, and they still almost won. And like, you hope that all 3 of those guys are better. Like, maybe James Harden is not quite as good in game 2, and maybe like Chris Dunn is not quite as good, or whoever. But like, 3 of the Clippers' best offensive players were terrible. Kawhi maybe not terrible. Were well below expectations in game 1. And I think you have to hope they'll be better in game 2, because if they're down 2-0 to this Nuggets team, Nuggets have home court advantage. You know, they have the best player in the series. It's tough to see winning 4 or 5 against them. I think the Clippers really need to win game 2 if they're going to have a chance.
My biggest concern coming into this series is just the Nuggets have real confidence and a history of coming through late in games and always executing at the highest level when it's asked of them. And even though the Clippers, I think, are the better team, the Nuggets strike me as one of those teams that can play poorly and just flip a switch and turn it on and just execute you to death when it matters most. And I'm not even sure if we saw that, because they did somewhat take away Jamal and Jokic at the end of that game, and Jokic missed a couple of free throws. They didn't play their best by any means.
Yeah.
But they scrapped with Russ, with Aaron Gordon, and they found a way anyways. And now I wonder, did they really get the Denver Nuggets' best shot? Do the Nuggets feel like, hey, we won a game, we didn't play that well? The Clippers can say all they want about having 20 turnovers, but the Denver Nuggets can also make the argument they didn't play well either, and they still won it. That's what I'm worried about.
I mean, I think the Nuggets can definitely say that. I mean, Michael Porter Jr. did nothing in game 1. He's their 3rd leading scorer. Jamal Murray played okay. It wasn't like a great Jamal Murray game. A lot of that had to do with Chris Dunn and Derek Jones Jr. on defense. But like, he did not have a great game. And Jokic was awesome, because Jokic is always awesome. It was not like a top tier Jokic game. He
didn't hit his averages.
No, I mean, as good as he was still the best player in the game, and it was not like an A Jokic game. It was like a B or B minus. So like, I think the Clippers can play much better. I think the Nuggets can also play much better. So I think both teams have some optimism. This is not like a Lakers get blown out by the Wolves or Grizzlies get demolished by the Thunder, where it's like one team is like, well, we might be out of answers really early in this series. I don't think the Clippers should feel that way, but I think the Nuggets also should reasonably have optimism they can play better, and they're already up 1-0, and they already have home court advantage. So advantage Nuggets, but the series, I would still anticipate the series goes at least 6. I think the series is not close to over, but the Clippers really need to win game 2, I think.
Lastly, Robert, I know it's addressed to me, but I'm going to make you have to answer this. Robert, if the Clippers were to lose this series, will Ty Lue or Lawrence Frank get fired? What do you think? This comes from Master of Keys.
No, I don't think so. The Clippers have played way above expectations this year. I mentioned this on either Twitter or wherever I was going into this, and I missed sight of this myself in game 1, because it was just a very frustrating game to watch. What I've been trying to say to people, and just to myself really, is that at this point, for me, the Clippers season is kind of gravy. They were not expected to be in the playoffs. They were not expected to be anywhere close to a 50-win team. They got the 5 seed. They won 50 games. They were generally, by and large, a very entertaining team to watch most of the year. They had their lulls, but they were a good, fun team to watch. There were some great moments. There were some great kind of highlights. And you know what? If they lose in the first round to the Nuggets, who have home court and one of the 10 greatest players of all time in the middle of his prime, it's hard for me to be that upset about it. And I think it would be hard for the Clippers organization. Like, they can be disappointed. They can be like, you know what? We think we're the more talented team. We think we should have won this series. But in terms of like major organizational changes, considering how far above their weight they pushed this year, I find it very, very hard to believe that Lawrence Frank or Ty Lue gets fired. Ty Lue leaving at some point, maybe. Like, there are going to be some really good job opportunities out there. It's possible. But like I would not anticipate either of them being elsewhere after this series. Even if the Clippers get swept, I don't think either of those guys is getting fired. I think Lawrence Frank had an awesome offseason and trade deadline. As somebody who's been quite critical of him the past couple of years, I think the Clippers front office did great work. And Ty Lue got this team to to 50 wins with, a not super talented roster and Kawhi Leonard not playing for a lot of the year. So no, I mean, Ty Lue's going to get Coach of the Year votes, and rightfully so. He didn't place in the top three. I imagine he finishes fourth or fifth, and I think it's very well deserved. So there have been times I've been very critical of both those guys. I don't think this season or a playoff series loss to the Nuggets would be cause for that.
I should mention Ivica Zubac is top 3 when it comes to most improved player. I think next to Dyson Daniels and Cade Cunningham. He did not finish top 3 when it comes to defensive player of the year voting. Next to Draymond Green, Evan Mobley, and Dyson Daniels. I got to be honest. I have looked at the Hawks on-off numbers.
Yeah.
And I believe their defense is technically worse with Dyson Daniels on the floor. Now, that may be a flaw in off-on, and he's playing next to worse defenders around him all the time with covering for Trae Young and stuff. But I just don't know if it makes sense. Yeah, they got an on-court rating with him of 114, and off the court, the defensive rating is 112. Does it make sense? Like, how much impact are you really having if you're one of the worst defenses in the league, which I think they are overall? Like, is that fair to ask?
Yeah, I mean, I would not have had Dyson Daniels in my top 5, probably not even top 10 of defensive player of the year. I think he's a very worthy all defensive candidate. If you were going to pick a wing for defensive player of the year, I think it should have been Amen Thompson, who's a better defender than Dyson Daniels on a much better defense on a much better team. I
would have gone Dort.
I mean, I would have gone Dort over Daniels. I mean, to me, Dort is probably a better defender than Daniels, but the Thunder are just so stacked everywhere on defense that, like, I find it hard to credit any single one of them. I mean, he's playing next to amazing defenders everywhere. Like, I get it. Like, and I think he's going to make first team all defense probably. But yeah, I think the Daniels top 3 defensive player of the year is kind of ludicrous, to be honest. I think Zoo would have been better.
Would you put Zubac over him before anyone else?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think Zoo. I think Zoo should have been top 3. Maybe we'll see if he gets top 5. I don't know. When the full ballots and kind of rankings come out. But yeah, I mean, I definitely would have voted for him over Dyson Daniels. I think it would have been between like him, Dort, Amen Thompson, even like Jalen Williams on the Thunder. You could have thrown in there. There were some other guys, but yeah, Dyson Daniels, he's a very good defender, but he is not defensive player of the year caliber, in my opinion.
Are you going to be upset when Cade Cunningham wins most improved player over Ivica Zubac?
That's so silly. He was the first overall pick 4 years ago, and it's just ridiculous. I don't. Yeah, Cade the Pistons are an awesome story. Cade's had an awesome season. No shots at him. It's a crazy pick. Daniels to me is actually a much better candidate for most improved player. Like, I think he is a phenomenal most improved. Like, I would have him top 3 most improved player. He was basically unplayable on offense for the Pelicans, and he's been decent on offense this year, and his defense has improved. So like he's a fine candidate there, but yeah, I mean, Cade, I don't think Cade would make my top 10 in most improved player. Like, Norm Powell should have been won most improved player votes over Cade probably.
I'm going to be frustrated because I'll let you go after this. I'm a freak that believes Ivica Zubac has had this in him for years. If they just actually played through him more, he could have been right where he is right now while he was 25 or 26 instead of having to wait till he's 28. I honestly believe that.
I think there's some of that. I think like he doesn't foul as much. I think he's he's a much better passer than he used to be. And
that's because he got reps. If they had just gave him reps before, he might be.
Yeah, I mean, it's I think his stamina has gotten better. I think there were times he wasn't physically capable of playing 34 minutes a game. I don't think that's always true. I think there have been times he's been. I'm totally on. He should have been playing more like the entire time he's been a Clipper, basically. But yeah, I mean, I think I would not have voted for him for most improved either. I think he's kind of the inverse of Dyson Daniels. I think he's a better defensive player of the year candidate than most improved player. So yeah, I kind of the inverse. I think he's very worthy of getting votes for both. I don't think he's going to win either of them. I do think he's, based on the ballots we've seen, I think he is a lock for an all defense team, which is phenomenal, and very well deserved. I would guess second team, but I would guess he makes an all defense team based on the ballots that we've seen reported.
This is why we call him Big Shot Bob Flom. I just throw the assists over, and he knocks down those big shots like he's Russell Westbrook.
Oh, God.
Awful. All right, Robert, I appreciate you doing this, man. I kept you for far too long. Thanks for the great analysis, as always. Really appreciate it, man.
Absolutely. Have a good one. Thanks.
Be good. There he goes from 213 Hoops, the Lob the Jam, the podcast. Highly recommend their last episode. You guys got to check that out. People in the chat getting after it, already talking about if we lose this series. We're in this series. It's 1-0. If you win game 2 tomorrow night, you are in great shape. Master of Keys, he can't offer solutions. He just says fire everybody or trade everybody, not realizing that you're not getting much back in return right now if you did trade Kawhi. Although if he makes it through the playoffs healthy, look, can we focus on this series? Master of looking too far into the future. Can we just focus on this series and see what happens? Can we do that first before we talk about we're calling for people's heads? I know that's what a lot of people just like to do in here all the time. And anytime the Clippers lose, fire this person and they overreact. And then when they win, everything's great. And we're going to win the championship. And they just rotate from one to the other all the time. But yes, of course it's a good chance. You know why? Because you're playing the best player in the league. So if they lose to Nikola Jokic and the Denver Nuggets, there's no shame in that. They were the 4 seed. The Clippers were the 5 seed. They won a championship less than 2 years ago. If they lose to the Denver Nuggets, there's no shame in that. Like Robert said, it's kind of all gravy right now. They absolutely exceeded their expectations this season. This was a really fun, successful year. They had the over-under at 37.5 games. The Clippers won freaking 50 with only getting 37 games from Kawhi Leonard. You're telling me Coach Lue didn't do a good job? You're telling me Lawrence Frank didn't do a good job? They did. If you say, well, they didn't win the championship, so fire everybody. God help us all. If you're just going to live, if that's how you want to live in your sports world, yeah, it's not going to go well for you. One team wins the championship every season. It's really hard. It's the goal of this franchise, but it's also worth celebrating things like a 50-win season when everybody thought they were going to win 37.5 games. Here we go again. Adam drinking the Kool-Aid again, if he's healthy. How many times have we heard that? The guy's already hurt again. Come on, Adam. What do you mean the guy's already hurt again? There's no breaking news out there. He's not already hurt again. You can't even live in reality. Kawhi is not hurt right now. 5 years of no progress. Thanks for all the solutions you're offering, Master of Keys. It's been a great conversation. Really sound stuff from you. Really reasonable, rational, logical. Dear God, I'm out of here on an Easter Sunday. I can't take anymore. I love y'all. It's been 198 straight days of Clippers talk. May they bounce back tomorrow night. Tip off at 7, pregame back here at 6. I'm Adam Moslin. We will talk to you then.
Off the air.